In a world where our population continues to grow and our ability to produce sufficient livestock diminishes, it's no surprise that meat alternatives have continued to gain popularity. While the concept may seem relatively new, meat alternatives have in fact been around for centuries. The first recorded use of a meat alternative was as early as the mid-10th century in China, where a tofu dish was referred to as mock lamb chops. Different types of alternatives continued to pop up around Asia between the 10th and 19th centuries in the form of yuba, also known as tofu skin, wheat gluten, and tempeh, or fermented soy. In 1922, Madison Foods introduced the first soy-based meat alternative. After this, soy became the most common type of meat alternative, which is still popular today. In 1998, the first patent for lab-grown or cultured meat made for human consumption was created. The interest for this cell-based meat continued in 2001 when NASA began experiments on their own version based on turkey cells. The industry remained relatively quiet in the coming decade until Impossible Foods started their journey to discover what would later be referred to as heme, a plant protein that produced the same iron taste as animal meat. As the decade came to a close, heme was officially approved by the FDA, which leads us to today, where more individuals are beginning to incorporate plant-based proteins into their diet. Up until the beginning of the 21st century, the innovative changes remained incremental, or changing little by little over the years. It wasn't until 2001 that we began to see radical changes within the industry. One of the prominent radical changes in the industry began with the shift in gears from creating meat alternatives that still tasted of the plants they were made of, to alternatives that were nearly indistinguishable from their meat-based counterparts. The biggest player in this change is Impossible Foods, who has created a burger that behaves as a standard beef burger would, down to the irony flavor that is synonymous with a regular burger. For the purpose of this video, we will focus on the innovations of vegan meat alternatives, such as those produced by Impossible Foods. One of the key players in this industry is Impossible Foods, who has created a burger that behaves as a standard burger would, down to the irony flavor that is synonymous with a regular burger. They are able to accomplish this with a protein they've nicknamed heme.
We surveyed a lot of proteins and we identified soy-like hemoglobin. Soy-like hemoglobin could come from one of two forms. One would be in its natural form, which is in the root nodules of soy plants. But the other would be fermentation, which is a far more scalable and sustainable way of making that protein. Yeasts are used for making other proteins in certain kinds of beers, wines, and so it's something people are familiar with. The yeast that we use makes its own heme molecule. We take the DNA for the soy-like hemoglobin protein and we insert that DNA into our yeasts.
So what does this discovery mean for Impossible Foods? To answer this question, let's look into the Vrio test, a tool used within companies to determine their relative competitive position in their industry. The Vrio test, as shown here, looks at four specific aspects of a company's resources. Value: is what is being produced valuable? Rare: is the resource unique to the company? And imitability: can other companies easily and inexpensively recreate the resource? And organization: is the company organized in a way that easily facilitates the use of this resource? So how does Impossible Foods stack up? Looking at heme, it is easy to see the value. Impossible Foods is able to add to the standard soy burger and turn it into something that everyone can enjoy. Heme and the processes used to produce it are also unique to Impossible Foods. As of yet, no other company has created anything similar. Given the time, money, and effort put into the perfection of heme, it is safe to say that Impossible Foods has created a resource that is rather difficult to imitate. It is a bit tricky to determine the organization of a company from the outside, but it would appear that Impossible Foods' policies and procedures are well organized, as they have been producing and expanding their product line with ample success over the last decade. Which brings us back to the question from earlier: what does the discovery of heme mean for Impossible Foods? The Vrio test shows that Impossible Foods has a long-term competitive advantage among other companies in the industry. However, that could change with the ever-evolving technologies in the industry. In order to keep this advantage, Impossible Foods will need to continue their success in their newer products. On top of this, they will need to make their products more readily available to customers. Given the recent FDA approval of heme, it is likely we will see continued growth within Impossible Foods over the coming years. In the industry as a whole, there appears to be no slowing down. With the success of Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat, another brand geared towards plant-based proteins that behave like animal meat, and the continued growth of cultured meats, it seems that the only hurdle is acceptance from individuals who shy away from these proteins for being different from what they are used to.